We're running a big programme at the Centre for Cities on Mayors. We've done polling of people living in city regions. We're doing events in all the city regions. We're doing pieces each week because we think people should be talking about this, thinking about this, and thinking about what they want their mayors to do. And with that in mind, I'm absolutely delighted to have Dr. Barber here, talking about his vision for how mayors are likely to change the power dynamic of policy making and implementation within the UK and globally, in fact, and how it's going to change things for citizens. So without further ado, Dr. Benjamin Barber.
The argument I want to make today, rather briefly, is that cities today, after 400 years being eclipsed by nation states, are once again likely to become the principal sites of governance, democracy, and globally relevant citizenship. We live in a world of interdependent global challenges, and yet we respond to them with 17th century, bordered, independent, sovereign nation states that can hardly cooperate with one another. And in that asymmetry, in that dichotomy, lies the principal problem of the 21st century. How do we respond to global interdependent problems with independent sovereign states born 300 or 400 years ago? How do we conserve democracy when it's associated with and wrapped up inside the nation state? It is in cities that you still find, and there are a lot of social science polls around the world in countries everywhere, all 5 continents, that show when you ask people, do you trust your national government, the average worldwide is about 35% on average, some less, some more, trust their national governments. Ask the same question about do you trust your municipal leaders, your mayors, your city councilors, on average about 70% say yes. Double. Because mayors, city councilors, they're your neighbor. They're part of the city. You might agree or disagree with what they're doing, but you feel, well, but they're trying. A mayor, a city councilor is a neighbor who takes a stint at running the common society you all live in. So it is time for cities now to take their history, their culture, their diversity, their strength, their demography, their democratic majorities, and the reality that they generate 80% of the world's wealth, and put some muscle on their bones and say, nation states aren't doing it, it's time for cities to do it again. Not one by one as happened before the nation state, but together. Oddly, nation states have become parochial. We used to say cities are very parochial, kind of local. They don't get the big picture. Nation states don't get the big picture. Cities and mayors and the citizens of cities get the big picture. When they work together, they can do something about the big picture. The cities of Britain, the 7 who will finally have elected mayors next year, should not think they are alone and that, well, let's see if we can make devolution work. Devolution is a global phenomenon. And the cities of Britain and the cities of Europe and the cities of Latin America and the cities of Asia and the cities of Africa have in common a need to say more power, more resources, more jurisdiction, and we will act not just nation by nation, but across borders globally, and when we do, we will begin to deal with the global problems that nation states after 400 years no longer are able to deal with. One of the problems cities have is with the economy is that cities are forced to deal with the consequences of a global economy, namely inequality of a radical nature, without being able to deal directly with the global economy. So they're dealing with the consequences without being able to take on those issues directly. And that is a very large problem, and that's why cities have to also influence national governments and international organizations to deal with those things. But what's interesting, and there are 2 chapters in the book in which I talk about it, there are a lot of things that cities can do when they're innovative and imaginative about inequality, even if they can't deal with the core causes. Because they're not bordered, because they're not nation states, because they don't rub up against one another, cities can grow and flourish mutually and reciprocally. When Germany gets bigger, as its neighbors learn, Belgium and Poland get smaller.
Okay.
But Brussels, Berlin, and Warsaw can all flourish You know, they can all have, and indeed, when they do flourish, as the hot support cities learn, they tend to flourish together. So cities are not involved in a zero-sum game because
Okay.
neighbors are territorial. They are, so I think that's a fundamental difference.